So I suppose first things first, could you tell us maybe a little bit about yourself and I suppose what you do?
Of course. So my name is Grace and professionally I go by Grace Alice because that's my middle name. I'm from Kerry but I live in Galway and my job is a sexuality and relationships educator. So basically I talk an awful lot about different aspects of sex, of relationships, of body image, anything really in the field of sexuality and relationships. I do workshops and sessions and yeah, that's me really.
So I suppose we can just dive right in into the questions. I feel like I've disassociated with a lot of friends since lockdown. They've been focusing on family and one or two close friends and I don't seem to make the cut. It's causing me a lot of pain and I feel socially inadequate as a result of a lack of connection with others. They're old friends, but is it time for me to give up on this friendship? Or should I keep trying to reach out and arrange to do stuff over the summer? How can I deal with drifting away from friends even if I don't want to?
Okay, so my advice for someone who, feels they're drifting away from their friends or feels that their friends aren't connecting with them as much is, first of all, to really be kind to yourself because this can be very difficult to cope with. Friendship struggles can be just as upsetting as relationship struggles. But I would say before you give up on those friendships, I would encourage this person to express how they feel to these friends. So without using blaming language, so really focusing on, using I language. So this is what I feel and this is what I experienced. The thing is, we often don't realise anyway what's going on in someone else's life at the best of times. But particularly, during a pandemic and lockdown, like a lot of people have talked about feeling fatigued, struggling with mental health, struggling with staying connected and making the effort with other people. So I would give your friends a chance to respond and explain where they're coming from. They might see things completely differently. They might be horrified that you've had this experience. As wonderful as online connection is, nothing can really replace that face-to-face interaction. So now that things are opening up a little bit more, they might be able to maybe reunite with them in a more kind of physical, maybe meaningful way. And if your friends do not react in a caring way or, in a positive, empathetic way, then it might be time to start distancing yourself from them. It doesn't mean you have to cut ties altogether because, friendships do grow and they change, and something like lockdown can be, a real test for any friendship. And that might just mean that moving forward, you still care about your friends, you still, are very fond of them, you have great memories, you still spend some time with them, but maybe you're not relying on them as much for that, emotional support and that staying connected. But I would give them a chance, first of all, to just respond with how they see things, and maybe there could have been something else, going on with them besides the friendship.
So I suppose what are kind of some healthy habits to have when starting new relationships, both I suppose platonic and romantic?
I would say one really important habit is to be yourself from the beginning. And I know that sounds quite maybe basic and simple, but it's not. It's actually really hard to be 100% authentically ourselves. We live in a world and society where we're kind of encouraged to do the opposite, where we're encouraged to kind of maybe hide parts of ourselves. So at the beginning of a relationship and even a friendship, the rose-tinted glasses tend to be on in full force. We can overlook important things. We could overlook certain red flags or, inappropriate behaviour or, there's a lot of different things that we might not pick up on because we're so wrapped up in the warm, fuzzy part of the beginning of a relationship. I would also say, don't lose yourself in the relationship. Like, enjoy all the excitement, all the butterflies and the buzz, but stay connected to all the other parts of your life that make you feel whole and make you feel like you, other friends, family, hobbies, passions, sports, whatever it is. And start your relationship off with that good communication. It's much more difficult when you're, at a later stage in a relationship and you are now only, expressing something that's really important to you and the other person might not see it the same way and you're thinking, oh, why didn't we actually clock this at the beginning, you know? So approach the person and the relationship with curiosity, not with a concrete idea of exactly how you expect it to be. Try to listen to your gut from the beginning and check in with yourself often, check in with how you're feeling. How does this person make me feel? How do they treat me, etc.? So I think they would be some of the main healthy habits to focus on at the beginning of any relationship, really.
I suppose there was a kind of a question on this person. He kind of noticed some red flags in a friendship. He was like, I've noticed my friend has been doing awful things for years, cheating on girlfriends, lying, being manipulative and the rest. I'm calling him out on everything now, but I think it might be time for me to cut ties. This is hard as we've known each other for years and I'm really good friends with his brother also. How do you know if enough is enough and will he change?
You know, calling out friends is a really difficult thing to do. And calling out horrible behaviour, disrespectful behaviour, it's such a brave thing to do. So well done to this person, first of all. So expressing how you feel again is super important. So again, using I language and connecting with that friend and saying, I really don't agree with your behaviour. It doesn't sit right with me. And this is how I feel about it. This is how it makes me feel. See how they react to that again. Now, this person has said that they have been calling out their friend. So they've obviously already started to do that. And I'm guessing there's not much change happening. You know, cutting ties is an option. But again, you might just decide to distance yourself from him, from this person. It can be very difficult, but friendships do change. And, you know, two people can grow in completely different directions. Even if you're really fond of them and love them to bits and have loads of history with them, it's okay to grow in different directions. And this is not to say that you'll never be friends again. There's really no way of telling if he will change. So all you can do is be honest, be respectful, and it sounds like you have been. And I would say when it comes to friendships and, you know, bad behaviour, enough is enough when nothing changes, regardless of how much you talk about it. And when you get that uneasy gut feeling, you know, maybe you no longer enjoy their company because it's overshadowed by how he is treating others. You know, the thought of meeting up with him, just the fun has gone out of it. Maybe it feels draining as well. So, you know, our friendships, like our relationships, they're not going to be rosy in the garden all the time. They come with their challenges. They don't make us feel amazing all the time. But generally speaking, you know, spending time with friends should kind of give you good energy rather than drain your energy.
So a lot of us are kind of coming out of lockdown, and I suppose we're meeting a lot more people and relationships might kind of tend to start. But how can I know if I'm ready for a relationship?
So it can be hard to know when you're ready for a relationship. It can be really hard to pinpoint that exact moment or that exact time in your life, and it happens very differently for everyone. I think a really good place to start is knowing the difference between healthy and unhealthy behaviours in relationships, okay? Because we're going to have relationships, whether they be friendships or romantic relationships or sexual relationships, with all kinds of different people. But the behaviours are something that can be seen across many relationships. And some are definitely in the healthy category, okay? So things like kindness, people taking responsibility for their actions, being able to apologise, having a healthy amount of space and different interests, having fun, having the crack, so important, being supportive of each other and being able to communicate and respect boundaries. There's some really healthy signs in a relationship. And then we have a lot of unhealthy behaviours that we can see in relationships, like, you know, dishonesty, shaming, like body shaming, for example, over-dependence, spending all your time with each other, punishing each other, so giving each other the silent treatment, or, you know, being really nasty in some way, controlling behaviour. So you can see that there's a lot of different behaviours that go on in relationships. And I think you'll know you're ready for a relationship when you can identify them, and you can also feel confident in your critical thinking skills. So for example, if I said arguing, a lot of people might say, oh, surely that's a bad sign in a relationship. Arguing and having disagreements is actually a very normal part of most relationships. But the difference between healthy arguing and unhealthy arguing is if the arguing is nasty, if it involves name calling, if it involves, shouting, or if arguing is happening all the time, those are all things that pushes the behaviour into the kind of unhealthy category. So when you're ready for a relationship, I think you'll just have a fairly sound understanding of how you want to be treated and and what you're looking for in someone else as well. And also the good stuff, so you really like the person. So, it's more than just maybe liking them as a friend or kind of fancying them a bit. It's kind of really developing strong feelings for a person. They treat you nicely. It is better to wait rather than to jump into a relationship that might not be for you. So don't worry about jumping into one right now. And I would just say to take things slowly, keep checking in with yourself, communicate and enjoy the excitement. And at the end of the day, you can end the relationship respectfully and kindly if it was not the right choice for you.
Yeah, I suppose we often don't think of how to know if you're ready for a relationship. A lot of people kind of, I suppose, would jump straight in because it's what everyone's doing. But there's a question here and it's like, he says all the right things but tells me he doesn't want a relationship. Should I stay?
If someone is saying all the right things but they're telling you they don't want a relationship, that's a bit of a tricky one. If you want a relationship, no, you should not stay, okay? It's okay for people not to want to have a relationship. It does not mean there's anything wrong with you or that they don't like you. There can be so many reasons why someone doesn't want a relationship. So first of all, it might be useful to just explore these with that person. Are they nervous of being in a relationship? Do they want to see other people? Have they had negative experiences before of being in a relationship? There just can be many reasons behind that. It mightn't just be as simple as, they're playing you along or anything like that. But that could be the case as well. So if you feel like you are both on different pages, then I would say walk away. And if you've communicated that and again, nothing is changing, I would say to walk away. Going along with a situation that you are not finding fulfilling can chip away at your self-worth and your happiness. It's not healthy for any of us to give a lot of our energy to someone who is not giving the same energy back. So trust me, when you get that feeling of someone wanting you as much as you want them, it'll be magic and it'll feel right and you'll just know that you want to stay. And most importantly, you both want to stay.
So the next one, I suppose, again, is kind of to do with relationships. And it's, my boyfriend never makes time for us and he always takes hours to text back. I feel like he's losing interest in me. Should we break up?
Okay, so if your boyfriend or your partner, if you feel they never make time for you and you feel like they're losing interest in you and you're thinking, should you break up? I would say the first thing, again, is communicate, and communicate more. What's really going on here? Is there something else going on in that person's life? Again, someone could be struggling with anything in the background and just not sure how to communicate it, or maybe it's affecting their relationship or their connections with other people. Now, at the same time, if you can't make any headway with getting an explanation and the behaviour continues, it is best to consider calling it quits. Everyone's idea of what being attentive and engaged in a relationship looks and sounds and feels like will be different. And you need to feel like they are on the same wavelength as you. Never let anyone treat you as an afterthought, because that's not what you are. So a breakup might be on the cards, but I would again say communicate first.
This next one, I set boundaries for an immature person, but he's constantly trying to persuade me he has changed. It has been months and due to the pandemic, we don't see each other often. So there's not a lot of opportunities for him to show me he has changed. How would I know that he actually is matured, and when should I start trusting him again?
If you haven't seen someone during the pandemic and previously, you've set boundaries for them and you told them maybe that they needed to change a behaviour and now they're promising you that they have changed their behaviour, this is a classic case of, you can talk the talk, but can you walk the walk? Everyone deserves a chance to show that they have changed a behaviour or a set of behaviours. Now, this is the case if they are still in your life and they haven't done something like awful that just doesn't deserve a second chance, obviously. If you begin meeting up out of lockdown and you can see that the behaviour has changed, you might decide to start putting just a little bit of trust into this person again, little bit by little bit. However, most importantly, build trust in yourself that you will be able to judge the situation and make a decision that is right for you. You know, talk to non-judgmental, trusted loved ones, even journal what you're feeling, and most of all, just listen to what your gut is saying.
So the next one, I suppose, is it's a breakup kind of question. My girlfriend and I broke up during COVID lockdown. We were living together and I've moved out. It's been tough, and I'm not sure how to cope and how to manage. Do you have any advice?
For anyone going through a breakup, there is definitely things you can do that will help you cope a little better. So no matter what the circumstances of the breakup were, you know, it can be hard for anyone on any end of one. So I would say spend lots of time with friends or family or anyone who makes you feel loved. You can talk to, you can have a laugh with them. Learn to enjoy your own company. That is a seriously important life skill. Allow yourself to grieve the loss of the relationship. You know, give yourself permission to really feel all the feelings. If you need to cry, if you need to scream, if you need to vent, like do so in healthy ways. It might be having a rant with a friend or going out and playing, you know, an aggressive game of soccer or something, or having just a good old scream into the pillow, or just channeling your emotions and recognizing them is so important to actually heal from this and move on. I would recommend as well, if you're struggling with the breakup, keep a list of all the reasons it didn't work out or things you didn't like about the relationship, even if they're just small things, because sometimes we can look back with these rose-tinted glasses and think, oh, it was so perfect, I've lost it all, you know, now I'm missing it, and our perspective can be a little bit warped. You might have also used some coping skills in the past that you might want to use now. Could be counselling or breathing exercises or meditation, and try to avoid doing things that will make you feel worse in the long term, even if they feel tempting right now. So, you know, alcohol, using drugs, abandoning your schoolwork or your college work, you know, sometimes these things can actually hinder our healing rather than help it. And as well, please try to remember, it's not a failure. You're not a failure. You know, try to frame it as a learning opportunity, even if it is a painful one. And it'll give you new insight into what works and what does not work for you in relationships.
So you spoke a bit about alone time after a breakup. Is it normal to want alone time in a relationship? And how would you kind of tell your partner that you want some time to yourself?
It's totally normal to want alone time in a relationship. It's not only normal, but incredibly healthy and essential for any happy relationship. So, you know, if you think of it like this, you can absolutely adore them and care for them, but having them around all the time just isn't healthy. It's incredibly important that partners have their own lives outside of the relationship, their own friends, their own hobbies, interests, dreams, goals, etc. I would suggest just reassuring your partner that you love them to bits, but that spending so much time together is just not good for your relationship and you really want the relationship to work. And explain that it will actually make you appreciate the time you do have together a lot more, and you will both bring a lot more to the table. And hopefully your partner will realise that this is in the best interest for both of you and for what you have together.
I think we're on to our last question. As life is getting back to normal in some ways, a lot of people are quite socially anxious. So I suppose, how can I prepare going back to life after lockdown?
For anyone feeling anxious, and especially people with social anxiety who are worried about going back to normal life after the pandemic, this is so okay and so normal and common. For many of us, normal life was not ideal to begin with, and many people are feeling like they don't want to go back to how things were, but instead they want to move forward to maybe a new normal. So I would ask you, what would you like to be part of your new normal? If you're like me, you hate big crowds. So maybe from now on, you'll decide when you're going to the cinema, you're going to go at a time when it's not so jam-packed. Maybe you'll make an intention to clearly and respectfully express your boundaries with others. tell your family and friends how you're feeling and what they can do to support you. Be gentle and kind to yourself. We have all been through one hell of a year and a bit, and this can be a chance for us all to reflect on our lives and lifestyles and decide if we want to make changes that will best serve us going forward.
Well, thank you very much, Grace, for answering all those questions.
No, thank you. Thank you.